And we are live. Hello, everyone. Welcome. If you're watching this on the replay, you can fast forward about 15 minutes and we'll get to the start. In the meantime, this is the pre-show. The pre-show. So enjoy that. Let's click a few things. Let's reset some cookies. Cookie. Change the way that looks. Let's empty some caches. And now, of course, I have a thing in my throat. There we go. Now let's listen to how this sounds. We'll do a sound check. Check, check, check. Check 2, 3, check 2, 3. Wait, that was not the right page. That's the right page. You people looking over my shoulder, why didn't you tell me that was the right page? Okay, let's see how this sounds. Oh, it's turned down. Whoa, turned down. Okay. How's it sound? Check 2, 3, check 2, 3. Wait, that was not the right page. That's the right page. See, that sounds fine. That sounds fine. Okay, that's working. How are we? All my cameras are different. I upgraded my video switcher software, so none of this might work. I don't know. Maybe. Let's change. I need to get the chat going. The chat. Let's get that going, shall we? Because I can't get to it. I can't see it. All right, let's tell the chat room that we are live. And let's turn on a chat room so that you can see it. Group chats. Let's go to the live event chat and edit and make it so that you can see it. Boom. Let's save those changes. Very nice. And now, live event chat. Let's clear everything that's in here. Okay. Now that's cleared out. Very nice. Let's move some things around on the screen. That's really too large. Let's make that smaller. Let's do a check. Oh, you know what I haven't done is grabbed this stuff. So let's do a quick check of cameras. Seem to be over. Is it too far? I don't know. We'll try this and see. Yeah, I need to move myself over just a bit. Who moved my cameras? What happened? Hold on. Let's see if this messes up everything. Oh, it came pretty close to messing up everything. That wasn't even close to what I wanted. Nope, nope, nope. That is not quite it either. Isn't this fun? Hey, is the live event chat showing on the live site? Let's find out. It should be, but who knows? Who knows between all of this that's going on? It's not. Let's edit that page right now. Right now. So you people can't even see the chat. And then I'll worry about cameras, camera angles. Why can't you see the chat? It's right there. Huh. Weird. Let's try it again. I'll see some people are in there. Hello, chat room. The chat showing up even? Yeah, it's showing up. It's fine. Everything's fine. All right, back to the camera. Why don't I like this? You can't see what I'm seeing, but I'm flipping around. You can sort of see what I'm... And this is wrong. Why is that wrong? Man. Really? That does not make me happy. We might just go with it, though. And I'm actually not too bad with that. Let's check. That's kind of centered. I kind of like that. That's completely wrong. Yeah, it's close enough. Not going to worry about the camera. Now, why am I seeing something else down here? Let's find out, shall we? Let's do this. Do this. Let's see what happens. All right. Well, that explains some of that. And what did I do last time with this video hub? I think I just restarted it. So I might disappear for a moment. Let's see. Let's go off. And see what happens there. And let's go back on. Wasn't that scary? What happened? Oh, I know what it is. It's because I haven't set up the outputs. Did I got output 2 here? Outputs there are working. Why are outputs here not working? Let's see if we can find out, shall we? Well, there's our video hub. Okay. TriCaster out 2. I've got monitor left, monitor right. And out 2 is going to monitor left. That's weird. What do you mean I'm already talking to myself? This is what I do. This is normal. Is everything going to output 2? No. Connection 2 shows program. Connection 2 should show preview. And if I do that, it does. It's working. That's the way we do it. Let's get recordings going, shall we? And let's go through a camera check, shall we? There's camera 1. Hello, camera 1. That's pretty well centered. Camera 2. Camera 3 needs to have something a little more interesting up on the screen, like a Socrative screen. Let's do this. Camera 3, camera 4. I need to grab camera 4 real quick. Let me grab that. There we go. Let's go look at the camera 1, 2, 3, and 4 with my head in it. That works great. Things are working. Well, it wasn't a horrible problem. I mean, it's something I could have lived with, but it would have just bothered me. Nobody wants that. Okay, let's I am outputting a lot of good audio here. So the audio doesn't seem to be, is it a bit low? Don't know why that would be, because I am giving it all I got. In fact, I'm streaming directly from here. Let's look at the stream. Let's look at the audio mixer. There's the mixer. Where's the output? The stream output looks good. It looks very good, in fact. Test 2, test 3, test 4. Let's see what it's doing audio stream-wise. Don't have any equalizer. There's no gain that I'm making up. Well, let's listen to it. Maybe I've got, gosh, there's a compressor in here too. I should really play around with this more. Audio stream output on my side looks really good, but I can play around with it. Let's see. Let's close this up. Let's listen in, shall we? Ba 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 ba. Let's listen in again. Maybe that was a little bit low. Boy, look at all the stuff popping up on the screen. I just want to start the video. Can we start? There we go. How's this sound? All right. Let's listen in again. Maybe that was a little bit. That is a little bit, isn't it? Just a tad. Just, I don't know what they changed. I upgraded my video switcher, so I have no idea what they changed on the stream. Can I tweak this up about 3 dB? I can't manually do this. If I go 3 dB, oh, that's not 3 dB. Hold on, everybody. Hold on. We're going back to 0. Boy, that's really hard to control. Can I just slowly cycle it up? There's 3.3 dB. So that's a little bit louder. Let's see how this sounds. Sorry if I blew out anybody on the thing there. Try not to talk when that was happening. Let's go /live. Now let's listen in at how it sounds new. Now, test 2, 3 on the thing there. Try not to talk when that was happening. Well, that's a little bit better. It's not, it's a little low though, isn't it? We'll have to play around with that later. Because now we're getting close to, showtime and stuff. Did I grab this? I did grab it. So let's move things back over. Let's go back over to our graphics. Session grabs. Let's grab that session graphic. And let's test that session graphic here. It looks beautiful. I'm so happy. We're starting in 3 minutes. 3 minutes, Mr. Sinatra. I should probably bring up a set of course notes. That would be good. Let's get rid of FlyZoo. Let's get rid of this. Let's get rid of that. 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 Let's look at, boy, that's not what I wanted. Who knows? Who knows? Let's bring this up. What's the best way to do this? Let's bring up this, and let's bring up this. Oops. Oops. Oopsie. It's all good, peoples. I guess we're going to do this. Now, this is recording. Recording here. Let's record local on TriCaster. So that's recording. What else? Sorry if the volume's a little low. We will adjust this, as they say, in post. Because I didn't change anything on this. Well, I did change. I changed a dramatic thing. I changed my video switcher completely, which changed a number of things. But that's okay. Okay, we are just about ready to go. I think we are almost ready to go. Let's turn off noisy things. Is this noisy thing turned off? Oh, I haven't set this up to show me the slides. What good is that going to be? Let's do that. Okay, all right. And we need Keynote. There it is. And I want to push the green button. Do I have a green button? I do. Very nice. Okay, everybody, let's do a study group, shall we? It'll be great. Here we go. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the March 2016 Professor Messer A+ Study Group. This is my monthly study group where I ask you questions, and online you use this amazing technology to answer the question, and then we get to see how we all did with all of these. I'll go through a number of questions today. Our first hour will be this Q&A, and I usually just, in the second hour, it's more of a post-show. I open up the phone lines. You can, of course, give me a call. We can talk about anything. But in the meantime, we can go through these study group questions. I've got plenty to go through in this study group. There's a lot of content that I've put together for this month based on the questions that you're sending me. I would not be able to do this with the study group without your support. I want to thank you for supporting me through my course notes and through my offline videos as well. As you're probably aware, I have both 801 and 901 videos available for you, depending on which version you're taking, and we will talk about that in quite a little bit. On the second half of the show, the phone lines will be open. You can make a note of the number there, and I'll, of course, give you the number later as well. If you'd like to watch what is going on here, the shenanigans that takes place on a daily basis, you can, of course, follow me on Facebook, on Twitter, on YouTube, on Instagram. Just type in professormesser.com/Twitter/Instagram/YouTube. You get the idea. You type slash and you find me on whatever that particular social networking thing is as well. Of course, remember that you can get a 10% discount off of your A+ exams or any of your CompTIA exams at professormesser.com/vouchers. You can also get continuing education units for either watching this live or watching this on the replay. Sometime in this first hour, I will give you a special keyword, and you will send me that keyword. I'll tell you how that happens whenever I give you that keyword. That's part of the way it works, is that I will give you the keyword and the method in which you use the keyword, and all of that works together to get you 1 hour of continuing education units. And as you can see on this list, the CompTIA A+ in a 3-year cycle, you can watch 4 of my study groups and get 4 continuing education unit credits. So it's kind of nice to have that credit coming in so that you're able to apply them towards a renewal. Most of you, I think, are probably going to take the Network Plus, or you're going to take the Security Plus. Some of you even take the A+ exams again. I don't know why you do that, but you do. That's certainly one way you can renew, or you can create an account and keep these continuing education units going. This is something very worthwhile to do as well. As most of you are aware at this point, there are 2 series of A+ exams that exist at the same time in our universe right now. There is the older 800 series exams. These are going to be retired on June the 30th. So we're now at March the 2nd. So you don't have a lot of time before those are going to retire. If you think that you will not be able to complete the 800 series exams before then, I would highly recommend that you start with the 900 series exams right now. The 900 series exams were released on December the 15th. So because of that, you have plenty of time, probably 3 years, before those are going to retire. You also can't mix and match. You can't take the 801 and then take the 902. You can't put those things together. They have to be paired up perfectly. So most of you, I would hope, if you're already in the middle of studying, finish up before June the 30th, if it's the 800 series. If you're just starting with this process, then please start with the 900 series. It'll be so much better for you. It doesn't really matter which one you take. You get exactly the same certification for either one of those. So that's one of those challenges. If you're already A+ certified, you don't have to take the same exams again. There's many other ways to upgrade and keep those things going. So we'll talk more about that as well. If you'd like to know more about my offline courses, you can go to my website and learn all about those. Both the 800 series and the 900 series are available. This is just the 800 series here. And it also includes, when you get my 900 series, there are course notes available with that as well. There's the 900 series link, professormesser.com/download901. So it gives you a good place to go to get those videos. Now, about today, I'm going to ask you questions, and you're going to answer the questions. Here's how you do that. There is a service I use called Socrative. So you're going to want to go to pop open a new window or go to your mobile device and go to Socrative.com, click the student login, and go to room Professor Messer. Make sure you type it in exactly correct, because if you don't, you'll be the only one in the room and there'll be no questions there, and you're wondering, where did everybody go? and that's not what we want. We want you to be able to see these questions as they show up. There are also apps that you can download for all of your mobile devices. These applications are the Socrative Student app. Make sure you get the Student app. And then, of course, you provide the name of the room you want to be in, which is Professor Messer. And you will go into this room where you will see a question. The question you'll see looks like this. How long have you been studying for your A+ certification? And then you can answer this, and you can see a number of you have already answered this particular question, less than 3 months, 3 to 6 months, 6 to 9 months. You can see all of the breakdowns of all of those. And notice it's real time. I get to see the view of what's going on as you're typing these things in, which is kind of neat on my side. I like to be able to see these things. So you can see that 29% of you said less than 3 months, 23% of you said 3 to 6 months. We have a nice distribution. There's 12% of you watching that already have your A+ certification. You might want to take advantage of the continuing education unit that I talk about there. So make sure you go out to Socrative. This is what you will see. How long have you been studying? Socrative.com. The room name, make sure you type it in right. Professormesser. I keep saying every month we're going to make this easier. And for some reason, I don't do it. Maybe I have this thing about the name. Like, you should be able to type the name at this point. We'll have to see how that works out. All the good names have been taken. I've already tried a few of them, so that didn't work out. And when you do that, you'll be able to participate and see these questions coming through. Well, I've got a number of questions to go through. Before we get to that, I'm going to go through a couple of things here. I'm going to skip ahead a little bit so we can get to one of these questions and get it going. Here's a question. I knew I had one in here somewhere. Which of these would you be most likely to use a proxy server? You'll see the question will automatically change on your side because I click a button and everything happens right there. If you think you know the answer to this, and I'll give you the multiple choice answers in a moment. To answer this, you go to Socrative.com, you go to click the student login, and you go to room name Professor Messer. So let's look at the possible answers for this particular question. Is the ways that you would be most likely to use a proxy server, would it be to locally cache internet traffic? Would it be to assign IP addresses automatically? Would it be to store and forward email messages? Would it be to provide a central authentication database? Or would it be none of the above? Don't answer in the chat room. Make sure that you go to the Socrative.com to the student login, or that you download the Socrative student app. Make sure you're aware of those things. So you should absolutely be aware of those. Make sure you know exactly what you're looking for and that you know the answer to these. Take a stab, even if you don't know. Stop Googling it. No Googling. Make sure you go through and, as if it's an actual exam, try it out yourself and see if you can answer the question that's associated with this. Of course, the Socrative student app works fine. You can also just go to any website. Go to the Socrative.com in your browser, either on your mobile device or on your workstation. Just pop open a new window and it'll work fine. Most of you, I think, are probably familiar that this is something kind of a network-related technology. It's something that really focuses on this. I think that whenever I start working through the A+ exam, I was mentioning this the other day, it's a very broad exam. There are a ton of things you have to know on the A+ exam, and networking is a big part of both the 801 and the 901 exam. So that becomes handy to be able to do that. I think whenever I start working through the details of the exam, it's almost something where you really have to take them in sections and do one section at a time. This is a really good example of this, being able to do that. Let's see how we did with this one, though. And which of these would you be most likely to use a proxy server? How do we do? Well, let's see. If we had to pick a winner, we're kind of almost tied for first. I guess if we had to pick a winner, it would be A, locally cache internet traffic. 27% of you said provide a central authentication database, and then it drops off rapidly from there. 18% said none of the above, 14% stored forward email messages, and then you've got almost nobody, 9% said assign IP addresses automatically. So which one of these would it be to understand what a proxy server does? Well, a proxy server actually does a lot of things, but only one of these things on this particular page would be most associated with a proxy server. First, let's talk about proxy servers. They are designed to sit in the middle of a communication between most generally you and the outside world, or from the outside world to an inside world somewhere. The point is that you're not talking to an end station from one point to another. For instance, if you want to talk to Google, you wouldn't talk directly to Google. You would send your request to a proxy server. The proxy server would talk to Google. It would get a response from Google. It would examine the response and see what's inside of it. And then if it liked the answer that it was getting, if there was nothing malicious inside of it, if you weren't trying to surf a site you shouldn't be going to, then it would provide you with the answers. Proxy servers are a bit of an older technology. You don't see a lot of places using them any longer, but you still find them from time to time, not necessarily for outbound proxy, but inbound proxy is a very popular way to use them, especially on the internet. If you're going to the Professor Messer website right now, you're actually talking to a proxy, because I use that to do a number of really interesting and very, very useful things for me. This is a number of these useful things are things like access control and caching and URL filtering and content scanning. It's a way to allow people to use the network, but to control what they're doing. One of the nicer features of this is that it's also useful for caching. And that is one very useful to be able to do this. You're able to, when you make this request out to a website and it pulls down the page of this website, it keeps a copy on the proxy server itself. That way, when the second person asks for exactly the same thing, the proxy server doesn't have to make the request again out to the internet. It simply provides you with a cached copy. This is, as I mentioned, a bit of an outdated technology. People are not installing new proxy servers. Proxy servers are, first, they break applications. Your application has to be proxy aware. And so proxy servers are not going to be able to support 100% of the applications you're using in your environment. And these days, tons of applications, of course, want to talk to the internet. Proxy servers are also a bit difficult to manage and configure. And ultimately, they're a little bit slow. You can imagine it's stopping what you're doing, making a request, receiving the request, sending it to you. There's somebody in the middle now slowing down everything. And these days we have multi-gigabit links out to the internet. We don't have time for these slow proxy servers to slow down our network communication. So these days you tend to see people getting rid of their proxy servers and putting in things like next generation firewalls, which are application aware, which can find malware, which can do content filtering, which can do encryption and decryption of the SSL communication. It's just a much better way to communicate, and much faster and more efficient way to communicate with next generation firewalls. So proxy servers, not really the latest and greatest, but you still see people using them, and they want to get rid of them. They want to phase them out, and that's what you'll generally see. So if we look at our answers of what we saw, which of these would you be most likely to use a proxy server? Well, locally caching internet traffic, the 32% of you got this one absolutely right. You generally have a proxy server provide DHCP, which would be the assignment of IP addresses automatically, so it's not that one. You wouldn't use it to store and forward email messages. That is an email server that's used for that. It's not a central authentication database either. It usually will require authentication, but it uses a separate database to be able to do that. You don't generally keep your authentication database on a proxy server. That's usually on an LDAP server, a TACAC server, a Radius server, or something of that. And it's not none of the above because, of course, the answer was A, locally cache internet traffic. So if you answered A, you got that one absolutely correct. Let's do another one, shall we? We're off to the races now. The question I have for you now is more about using network capabilities. I'm hitting you with a couple of network questions first off. That's what most people are asking me about this month. So I thought I'd give you a couple. I think this is my only two networking ones that we're going to have. So we'll move on to other topics right after this. But this one is really talking about something at the command line. And of course, on the A+ exam, you are expected to know what is happening at the command line for your operating system, for network troubleshooting. And this is a network troubleshooting question, which is, which of these would you use to view all of the incoming network connections to your computer? Remember, no answering this in the chat room. Make sure that you are answering it in Socrative. Go to Socrative.com where you can choose either A, netstat, B, traceroute, C, ipconfig, or D, ping. It's got to be one of these, right? Which one of these would you use to view all incoming network connections to your computer? I didn't give you a none of the above on this one. I cut you a little bit of a break on that one. If you think you know the answer, go to Socrative.com to the room name Professor Messer, and you can answer. I'm going to kind of peek at how you're doing. My goal is to have about 50% of you be able to answer this question. So that's my ultimate goal, is to have that. So at least I know that you are indeed at this point answering these questions, and at least I've got half of you also now thinking about what this problem or question might be, trying to figure out the answers for these. This is something I use a lot. This is a functionality, being able to see exactly what is connecting to your computer at any point in time can be very useful. So make sure you go through and understand these capabilities. This is both a question that you might find probably most likely in the 802 or the 901. They rearrange things between these two exams. So if you're studying for your 802, this is a bit of an 802 question. If you're studying for your 900 series, it's a 901 question. So they did change up a bit about troubleshooting. You tend to have a lot more troubleshooting on the 901. Well, you now have troubleshooting on the 901. You had no troubleshooting on the 801. So things had a little bit of a change. Well, let's see how we did with this one. We got a number of answers. 62% said it's netstat. If we want to go with what everybody says, that's the one we choose, and that drops off from there. Kind of a high for second with traceroute and IP config, and then 6% of you said ping. So let's see what the answer might be for this one. If you're trying to determine who's connecting to you, in fact, this is a utility that does a lot, not just gives you the idea of incoming connections, but netstat stands for network statistics. It gives you a lot of information about what's happening. If you wanted to show, for instance, all of the active connections, both inbound and outbound from your computer, this is a good example. Netstat-A would give you that particular example of what you would use with that one. There's also a Netstat-B, which matches these to the binaries that are running on your computer. So these are the programs that are running on your computer. So if you're trying to figure out what application, what program is creating that connection out to a server that's out on the internet, it will show you, oh, that's your Chrome browser. That's your Firefox browser. That's your FTP application. That's a Twitter application you're running. It will tell you exactly what binary is being used to make that connection. There's also a way you can do this where you just get IP addresses and not names. You can add a -in. And you can combine these. You can do a netstat-abn to do all of these at the same time right there on the command line. It becomes very useful to have that functionality. This is a very useful utility. It is one where has a lot of different capabilities. It can show you routing tables. It can give you an idea of incoming connections, outgoing connections. You can show just IPv4. You can show just IPv6. When you start really getting familiar with Netstat, you will be surprised at just how much information you can gather from that single utility. So, of course, if you on this one answered Netstat, and you did pretty good here. 63% of you answered Netstat. You did get that one absolutely correct. Traceroute, of course, will tell us the different hops, the different routers between you and a remote device. ipconfig will give you an idea on a Windows machine what the IP configuration is. What is your IP address, your subnet mask, your default gateway, and etc. And the ping command checks to see if a device is responding to you across the internet. So in this case, clearly, Netstat-A was the correct answer. Let's do another one, shall we? We're going to give you now more of a 902 exam. So if you're studying for the new exam, this question is absolutely for you. The question is, which of these Linux commands would you use to rename a file? So now we have to figure this out. Remember, no answering in the chat room. I'm watching you. Don't do that. Instead, go to Socrative.com to the room name Professor Messer. There is quite a bit that you have to know about Mac OS and Linux on the 902 exam. Now, I was going to say the 900 series exam, but it's really the 902 exam where all of the Mac OS and all of the Linux lives. There's very little, there's really nothing Mac OS or Linux related on the 901 exam. So you'd have to absolutely be able to see these. And it gives you over 20 different Linux commands that you now have to know. Now, they aren't telling us exactly how much of these Linux commands you need to know. So in my videos, I'm giving you both what the command does, and I'm giving you a few examples of how you would use these at the command line, just so you can see how to do that. Since they are in the exam objectives, I suppose they could ask you to also use these commands at the command line. But now you're getting into a crazy amount of information. 22, 23 different new commands that you would need to know. Those are extensive. In fact, these commands they give you are identical to the commands you would use in Mac OS. So although I'm saying Linux here, This would also apply at the command line. In fact, all of the commands on the exam objectives would also apply in Mac OS as well. So it's nice that you have, once you know these, they'll work across anything that you're happening to use on these views. So I have a few options for you. I didn't even tell you what they were. The different commands you might choose are ren, R-E-N. Is it MV? Is it rename? Is it CP? Or is it RM? It's got to be one of these, right? So see if you know what they happen to be. Let's see how we did with these particular commands. I almost gave this one to you as just a fill in the blank, but it just seemed mean to do that. So I didn't. I gave you some options, and we're all over the place. We've got, let's see the one that's the highest. It's not a majority, but it is the highest at 41%. We have REN for Ren. I guess for rename is how we would think. What's the next one down? Tie for second between rename and RM. We've got for a third MV at 14% and CP at 6%. Well, the answer to this one might surprise you. With Linux, when you want to rename something, there is no rename command. You are actually moving it from one name to another. I know it kind of sounds weird, doesn't it? You're not just renaming what's there. You are moving it. And when you move it from one name and you move it to be a different name. So MV, moving a file, will move. You can keep a file, of course, the same name when you move it, but by changing the name when you move it, it also renames the file. And this is how you would rename the file in Linux. This is how you would rename the file in Mac OS. You would move it with the MV command. It's very similar to a copy command or something very similar in the DOS or Windows command line world. So you would MV, the name of the file that you want to move, and then what you want the file to move to. If you need to change the name, you would obviously change the name instead of just specifying a separate folder or subdirectory for it to go in. And you can see the example that I even used here where I list out all of the files, and there's a file up here called first.txt, and then I performed an MV first.txt, second.txt, and when I list out the files again, you can see first.txt is no longer there, and second.txt is now showing up, so I effectively renamed the file by moving it. I know, it doesn't make sense, does it? Once you kind of use it a couple of times, you figure out, oh yeah, that's what I should be doing. But it's clearly going to be the MV command. So the 14% of you, I didn't hit my 50% on that one. I failed on this one. The 14% of you that chose MVB got this one absolutely correct. There is no ren command. There's no rename command. RM will remove a file. That's not what we want to do. A file or directory, and CP is a copy command. It's not renaming, it's creating a duplicate of it. So that would not be the correct one either. So that is a good example of a Linux command and something you need to know when you're using these operating systems. And you need to know it for your A+ exam as well. It's all in the exam objectives. Well, if you are someone who's trying to determine what are all of these command lines, I've created a consolidated view for you so you can see all of these. And you can see these in my A+ course notes. I've taken all of the text, all of the graphics. I think I've taken everything. These are my biggest course notes for A+ that I've ever done for the 900 series exam. These are also available for the 800 series exams as well. I think the link here goes to the 800 series, but if you're studying for the 900 series, there are also links on my website in the pull-down menus and on the front page that will take you to the 900 series course notes, and I'll show you those in just a moment. The 900 series course notes are extensive, and everything's in here. All of those command lines that we were just talking about, all the graphics that are in my videos, all of the text now. I've taken all of the text. A lot of people say, I want to get all of the slides. What if I took all the text from the slides and I put them into a format that was much easier to use? Those would be the course notes. This is what they look like. I've got my 901 course notes on the left and my 902 course notes on the right. You can see there's a lot of detail. You might even recognize a number of these things. I've sat here in the studio and taken pictures of memory modules so I can put them into these course notes. And we were just talking about Linux commands and the other pieces, and you can scroll down and see operating system command line tools. Here's the command lines, disk manager, migration tools, system utilities, and of course I've got all the Linux commands and Mac OS information in here as well. There is so much that you have to know in all of these. Here's all the Linux commands, for example, all on the screen. Ton of information available. I've tried to consolidate everything. I take almost all my own pictures for this. There are a number of stock pictures as well, if the stock picture actually is something that makes sense for what I'm doing. I just don't, you ever see stock photos and they're just miserable? It's a person, it's a lady smiling and holding a hard drive. There's none of that in there. I give you a very detailed close-up view. Well, I'll give you an example of this. Some of these are stock pictures. Some of these are pictures I made myself. And you can see they're very detailed pictures about what you need to know for these exams. And they're inexpensive, $10 each. And of course, all of these go back to keep the website going. As you know, all of my videos are absolutely free to watch. Every minute of every training video is available online for you to watch for absolutely free. This is a way to also keep the website running. As I mentioned, I've got a proxy service that I use. I have multiple web servers that are running, a database server. There's a load balancer. There's actually 2 load balancers in place to do this. There's all kinds of infrastructure that is required to keep this thing going, and I could not do it without your support. I want to thank everybody who has already purchased these. It goes a long way to keeping the website going. I can't even explain to you how important it is. So thank you so much for that. And I hope you consider this. Go out to the website and have a look yourself. I have a description of what's in there. Maybe it's something you can use for your studies as well. Doesn't replace your book. It doesn't replace the videos, but it's a great summary when you're studying this last few weeks, ready to go in and take your exam. Please feel free to have a look, and thank you so much for your ongoing support. Let's do another question, shall we? I've got plenty more here. This one, we're shifting gears into hardware. And this one is a 901 exam question. You can see I'm doing much more 901 exam questions in here, although this is certainly something that's useful to know regardless of what exam you happen to be studying for. This particular question is dealing with a TN LCD display. Now you notice I'm not giving you a lot of hints here. I'm just telling you that it's a TN LCD display. You have to know what this means because I'm asking you what would be a disadvantage of this. I try to make these questions so there's multiple steps. A disadvantage of a TN LCD display, first you have to know what a TN LCD display is, and then you have to know what the advantages and disadvantages of that. So that's one of the things you have to know. Is the disadvantage slow response time, a poor viewing angle, a high power draw, or relatively more expensive to produce than an IPS LCD display? Well, if you think you know which one of those it is, go to Socrative.com, go to the room name Professor Messer, and you can answer this as well. For those of you asking the chat room how much XP, Windows XP, I'm guessing the 900 series has in it, it has 0. It has 0 Windows XP in it. So the 900 series exam focuses on Vista, Windows 7, and Windows 8/8.1. 8 and 8.1 are effectively the same thing. So those are the 3 different platforms you need to know for the 900 series exams. Very useful to have that knowledge, though. I think XP, I'm still seeing a lot of people using XP to hit my website, so it's still out there. You're probably going to be migrating them. That's the thing you have to know about XP at this point. How do we get you off of using this and get you using a modern operating system? That's the real challenge. People in the chat room going, XP is dead. XP is nowhere near dead. XP is alive and well. I'm looking, because I can tell from the stats of people hitting my website what operating system people are using. I know it is crazy. I have to agree. I'm not saying that's good. I'm just saying that's what it is. That's just how it works out on these pieces. Windows 10 is not on the 900 series exams. They don't tend to add operating systems to their A+, at least not easily. So I don't think we'll see Windows 10 on the A+ anytime soon, but who knows? They can, of course, change their exam objectives at any point. So, of course, you might run into that. Let's see how we did with this question. How did we do? Let's find out. Well, we're sort of a mixed bag again. So a disadvantage of a TN LCD display. We had 39% that said poor viewing angle. 28% said it's relatively more expensive to produce than the IPS LCD displays. And then kind of a tie for third is a high power draw and a slow response time. Well, let's talk about what a TN display really is, a twisted pneumatic LCD display. This is one that has, for you gamers out there, this is the one you're probably working to get. although you will find that some of the IPS displays are coming along with their response times. But these tend to be the highest response times. You can see that if you're gaming, response time on LCD is a big deal, because if you're something that's going fast on your screen, you don't want it to blur. You want an instant visualization of what's going on there. You've got a low power draw. It's kind of nice when you're trying to use these displays, that's taking up as little power as possible. But one of the big disadvantages of this, even though you've got this fast response time and low power, is you really have to view it on a very narrow viewing angle. You kind of have to view it straight on. And you may have seen these. If you ever get to the side of an LCD panel, you start looking at it from the side, the colors will almost invert. You'll see an inversion of those colors. It looks kind of weird, like you're looking at a negative. Remember negatives? Why am I giving you something you have no idea what I'm talking about? Forget that example. You look at it and the color inverts. This is a little different than if you have something like an IPS, an in-plane switching LCD display, where these are used for someone like me who does a lot of photography and video editing, because you get very good color representation. I don't know that it's really necessary for me. I almost tend to go with the TN displays because I want high response times for the games. This is one where if you touch it on a mobile device, the IPS displays won't give you that tailing. They won't discolor as you're touching the screen, which is really useful on mobile devices, but they are more expensive to produce. So the IPS tends to be more expensive than the TN. So if we look, obviously the disadvantage for the TN as we listed here is that it has poor viewing angles. And if we look at the responses that we did here, you can see that B, 43% view. Obviously the number that is the largest here, so that's good. Almost 50% did say poor viewing angle. Now, if you're one of the folks that's slow response time, high power draw, relatively more expensive to produce, then obviously that is something that did not apply as a disadvantage of a TN LCD display. But those are things that now you know what the differences are. So if you're presented with these two things on the exam, you're going to need to know these differences. And as I mentioned on the 901 exam, this is absolutely in the exam objectives. Make sure you do that. Yeah, I know people do answer after I give the answer, and that's fine too. That's okay. This is not a grading thing. This is one of those that you do run into. It is definitely a technical term. You probably have to dig into the specifications of the monitor itself, because they don't tend to tell you that here is a new TN display or a new IPS display. You're the one who has to look at the specifications. What is the response times? What is the underlying technology? And if you look at display specification pages, they will tell you in there if this is a TN display or an IPS. It clearly will put it in there because they know there are people that want to know that piece of information. And it gives you all the details for those and being able to work with those pieces. Let's do another question now. Let's shift gears over to operating systems, shall we? Let's talk about Windows. The question Windows I have is, which of these Windows features would be the best choice to encrypt a single folder? Which would be the best choice to encrypt a single folder? And I have some options for you. If you've ever had to encrypt a folder in Windows, you'll probably get this one right. The different options are explicit permissions, BitLocker, network share, EFS, VPN. Which of these Windows features would be the best choice to encrypt a single folder? You'll notice that it uses some terms here, and you'll see this often on the A+ exam, where it's going to ask you for the best choice. There may be multiple answers in this particular response that might apply to answer the question. But here I'm asking you what the best choice might be. And there will always be one that really does stand out as being the best choice for what you're trying to do. These are not trick questions. They're really seeing if you understand the differences between all of these different technologies, and perhaps more importantly, how to apply them. Because now we have to understand which might be the best one to use, and you obviously have to know how to implement them to be able to answer that question. So hopefully you know what this will be. Now, this will apply to both the 802 exam and the 902 exam. So everybody's all in on this one. You should be able to answer this one and figure out those pieces of those two. I know it does kind of feel sometimes like a trick question, but it's not. In fact, I found that a lot of the exam questions that are associated with the CompT exams are relatively straightforward. There's really not a place where it might go one way or the other. They're right on the money. I really do understand what they're saying, being able to work through those pieces and being able to work out exactly what it happens to be. So let's see how we did with this one. We had a number of people answer. How do we do? Let's click the button, and you can see I think we got a tie for first. In fact, I guess we had 2% more than any other. Is BitLocker and EFS are effectively tied. There must be something about those two. Explicit permissions came in at 16%, and then everything dropped off after that to network share and VPN. So the technology we are most interested in is one called, are we ready for it? Encrypting File System, EFS. This is the ability to encrypt files at the operating system level. And we can pick and choose what files or what folders we would like to encrypt. This is using the capabilities that are built into NTFS to be able to do this. So you would have this functionality if you're running Windows and the drive that you have is running an NTFS file system, which I guess most of us are using these days. This encrypting file system uses your password, your username and your password as the key that it uses to encrypt it. So if somebody was to administratively change your password or they were to modify your username, you would not be able to decrypt these files unless you happen to have a backup of the key that you would use. In fact, a lot of organizations will keep your key as part of the Windows Active Domain infrastructure. You'll find this EFS functionality in Vista Business, Enterprise, and Ultimate, Windows 7 Professional, Enterprise, and Ultimate, and Windows 8 and 8.1 Pro and Enterprise. So you do have to know what edition, I said edition, I don't know why I did that, what edition of the Windows operating system that you're going to be using and what the different capabilities will be in those editions of the operating system. So if we are someone who answered EFS, we looked at this, the 39% of you that answered D got that one absolutely correct. Now, why wouldn't it be BitLocker? Well, the question was very specific. It's kind of hard to see. Let me scroll down so you can see it under my head. Which of these Windows features would be the best choice to encrypt a single folder? So the real question here was very specific. BitLocker, of course, is an exceptional method for encrypting your entire drive. It is a full volume encryption methodology. It is a technology that encrypts everything, not just a single folder, but everything. Well, here the question was not asking you about everything. It was asking you what would be the best choice to encrypt a single folder. And in that case, EFS is clearly the correct answer with this one. It would not be explicit permissions. That is a way to evaluate how permissions are granted in the file system. And I have a whole section of a video that talks about implicit and explicit permission setting, so you can understand what the differences are with those. So when you are using a Windows operating system that happens to be those editions, and you are using it in a file system that is NTFS, then the EFS functionality will show up in the attributes of the files. You'll simply have the option to encrypt contents to secure the data. If you were not running NTFS, that would not be an option that would appear. I think it'd just be grayed out. You wouldn't have that available to you. So that's the big differences between all of those and being able to work with those, is you really do have to go through and understand the differences between all of those different technologies. And I think that's why whenever we deal with trying to figure out what the differences are between all of those different Windows editions and all of those different commands and functionalities, you do have to be able to parse them out very clearly for the A+ exam. Don't miss those. It becomes very important to be able to use those and be able to work with them. Well, this brings up a very good example. If you're trying to use an operating system and use these capabilities and be able to apply these to what you're trying to do, then you're going to want to go through and work with these technologies, perhaps hands-on. And in fact, that's one of the capabilities available that my friends at GTS Learning have created. They have something called the GTS Learning Live Labs. And if you want to know more about these, you can go to professormesser.com/live labs. And what these provide you is a view, a real-time lab that you can work through. I'm going to find one on my screen. We're just going to load some up. I've got the live labs running right here. I'm going to scroll all the way to the top. You can see Windows 7 System Administration. I'm running the 800 series ones here, but they also have 900 series as well. Windows Maintenance Tasks. Let's go look at one that is Windows Networking. We'll choose that. I'll start this up. and it brings it up to a screen with an entire lab that's on the right side. I've got it all in this tiny screen so you can see it with the screenshots and everything. And there are actual servers here that I can click on and start powering them up. So it's as if you had all of these machines sitting in your lab already or on your desk, and you're able to boot them up individually and work with them. This appears to be a domain controller. Here's a Windows 7 device, and here's a Windows XP device. So these are real operating systems. They aren't simulations of operating systems. They aren't emulations of operating systems. We're really taking advantage of virtualization technologies and being able to have all of these in the cloud, because none of this software, none of these screens, and none of these systems are sitting on your computer. In fact, if you're using a modern browser like a Firefox or Chrome, then the capability, the HTML5 capability to do this with the remote control is built into the browser. You don't even have to do anything. You don't have to load any extra software, and you're able to remotely control all of these and being able to work through them. So the good example was the last question that really talked about, how do I handle encrypting a single file? Well, it would be nice if I was able to go to a Windows server, click on it, have it start the Windows server, and put me at a real Windows session that I could then go through and look at with these different settings. This is a domain controller. In fact, I'll go out to the C drive. There's probably a number of user files that are out here. There's probably nothing on this particular machine. Public music, yeah, there's no files out on this one to be able to pour through. I'll go to the Windows directory, which I probably shouldn't be doing, and we can look at the properties of these files to see what's on here. And you can, of course, see it's a full-blown Windows device that I can now use to start going through these different labs. Here's a Windows 7 device. We'll click on that. There's the Windows 7 desktop. Here's a Windows XP device. We can't get enough Windows XP, so there it is. And look how fast you can move between all of these different operating systems because it's simply screenshots. And now I can start stepping through exercise 1. I can verify network settings, go to the network icon in the notification area, click on Windows Explorer, expand these capabilities, and it takes you through step by step, understanding exactly how to use these. These are the GTS Learning Live Labs. If you'd like to know more about it, go to professormesser.com/live labs. There's special pricing if you follow that link. I think it's $99 for an entire year of access to these. And there's a free hour. If you think this might be something you might use or you're not sure yet, scroll down to the bottom of the page that you land on, and you can fill out a form to get a free hour and try it out yourself. See how it all works with you. I think you'll find that it's a very useful technology. I use it all the time for creating screenshots and things that I'm using in my labs that I can then show you. So it comes in very handy for me as well. Have a look at that. See if you something you might want to use. And I want to thank GTS Learning, of course, for supporting what we're doing here. Well, let's go back to our questions, shall we? We can find out more about this. I've got now a picture question, but I think with this one, I actually gave you a fill in the blank. Did I do that? Yes. So you have to fill in the blank with this one. The question is, what connector is this? What connector is that? You should be able to do that. And then in the chat room, folks are talking about the pricing. Make sure you follow my link because you get better pricing than if you were to go to the GTS Learning site by itself. This connector is one you do need to know for both the 801 exam and the 901 exam. I'm looking for the very specific name of this fiber optic connector. So, in fact, I probably should just say, what fiber optic connector is this? You very well could get picture questions on the exam. You can get matching. You can get fill in the blank. There are what CompTIA calls performance-based questions. Very useful to have that. So you absolutely could be asked that. There's a YouTube video on the CompTIA YouTube channel that talks about the exam experience. We might have time to show that and being able to work through those pieces. Have it there as well. I like being able to get these kind of questions too, because it really does help you understand more about what you need to know with these particular things that you work with. These cables, these connectors, these systems. You need to be able to recognize them. You need to be able to recognize them and know what they are immediately. A lot of people say, yeah, I'll just Google it. You don't have time to Google when you're in the middle of a network crisis or you're trying to solve a problem or answer a question in a meeting. You need to be able to know what these things are immediately. So I'm looking at the answers here. I'm not going to show you what the answers here, but a lot of you did very good with this one. Some of you did not know this one. It's nice of you to answer, though. Those are some delightful answers that I'm getting and then the list of answers in this one, maybe a fill in the blank would not have been a good answer with this one. This would be a good one to go through though. So what is this particular connector? I'm going to wait for a few more people. How many have answered? You guys are doing pretty good with this one. This is a hard one to Google, isn't it? You really would have to know exactly what you're looking for to be able to get through this one and Google all of the pieces and being able to work through it. I like these particular questions though. Being able to work through all of the different ones there might be. Let's see what answer this really might be. It's an LC connector. This stands for Lucent Connector. Could also stand for Local Connector or Little Connector. You almost always these days see it paired together like this. One of the challenges when you're working with fiber optics is often it will put them into this format that you see right here, where you've got individual wires, individual fibers, and you have to put them into the right place. And you can see they're not connected. Now, of course, if you're connecting fiber from one side to the other, the transmit on one side has to go to the receive on the other side and vice versa. So it's nice when they're bundled together like this because they're already split into the right side. So all you have to do is plug it in. You don't even have to think that you're plugging it into the right one. You just simply plug it in. And in fact, on the picture, did it have an L and an R? This one was kind of nice. This is very common to see where people will put a tag on it and they'll put the tag on the other side that matches so you know exactly which one of these fibers you're working with. But sometimes they don't have that. Like this one's just 2 fibers. You plug it in. If it doesn't work, is it because you swapped them or is it because you have another problem? So this becomes even a bigger issue. It's kind of nice to have them already labeled or have them connected together like we see here. And they're also relatively small. That's why we call them LC or little connectors, because they're a much smaller form factor than some of the ST or SC connectors that we've used in the past. And of course, when you have a smaller form factor, you can fit more into a single slot that's in an 18, 19-inch rack. Becomes very useful that way. You can fit a lot more across on a 19-inch rack when it's set up that way. So that's a good one to know. Certainly you will run across LC connectors. If you are working with fiber and you're working with switches and routers, you're going to run into an LC. So it's a good type of connector to know. So if you did answer LC when you sent me your little note, you got that one absolutely correct. I think LC would work. You don't have to say a Lucent connector or little connector, but some of you did. Some of you knew all of these. A multi-mode Lucent connector, Lucent Technologies connector. Well, now we're really going into details. I'm not even sure if it really is a Lucent specific product. I'm not sure how it came up with the Lucent name, but it's stuck. So LC is the one that we're working through that we know with all of these pieces, being able to work through those. I like having those technologies there too and working through those and having them with those pieces. Being able to work through these can be really useful, but we've got other things that are outside the scope of infrastructure and being able to work through these as well. Oh, by the way, with those question in the chat room, somebody said, does the double connector mean it's multi-mode? Nope. It is the fiber itself that determines whether it's a multi-mode or single mode. You're always going to have dual connectors with fiber, one for transmit and one for receive. Almost always. There are some technologies that don't do that, but generally almost all of them are able to use these as well and work through these and have them there. Let's go through the other pieces of this, being able to work through the others that you might work with. Let's go through these questions. You've seen it up on the screen. Oops, let's cancel out of this. Let's go to the next question. Here we go. Which of these would be the most likely reason a mobile device would be unable to decrypt email? Why would that be? Why would we have a situation where a mobile device would be unable to decrypt email? And I've got some options for you. This is not one that you would run into. Would it be the wireless network passphrase is incorrect? Would it be the mobile device hardware is faulty? Would it be the mobile device does not contain the correct private key? Or would it be the user's login credentials are incorrect? This is definitely a 902 question. This is something that is in the exam objectives that is clearly spelled out as something you need to know. So you should absolutely be able to work through this particular question for the reason a mobile device may be unable to decrypt email. And of course, if you have a mobile device That's a huge part of your mobile device. It needs to be able to read your email. And if it can't decrypt those things, you're going to be in trouble being able to work with those and be able to have those there. I think that whenever I start working through these, it becomes a question as well. I want to be able to answer those and have them all there. We should be able to step through what it isn't. Maybe that's a good way to find out what it happens to be. I want to take a peek over here and see which one of these you folks think it is. That's one of those, and being able to work through these. Let's see how we did. I'm going to flip over to these questions, and then I'll explain to you why it happens to be this question. Whoops, went to the wrong answer. Let's see how we did. You saw a little preview there, didn't you? So 68% of you, I would say that's a good majority of you, have said the mobile device does not contain the correct private key. And it drops off pretty well from there. We can see that 23% said the user's login credentials are incorrect. That's why you can't decrypt the email. And then you've got single digits for wireless network passphrase is incorrect, and the mobile device hardware is faulty. I think if you even didn't know the answer to this one, that I think you'd be able to get this one right, especially if you understood a little bit about how encryption and decryption of these things operate and being able to work through them. Whenever we start looking at decrypting email and going through these pieces, this is very often something that's integrated into an existing email package. Microsoft Outlook is a very good example of this, where all of the encryption and decryption is built into the application itself. And it's an important aspect of this. Now, obviously, encryption and decryption of this information is incredibly important. I don't know. For some reasons, the people seem to think that's a very important thing for my mail, and I would have to agree. But you have to have the right keys. And if you are decrypting the information, you need your private key to be able to do this. This private key piece is the important piece. You can't decrypt unless you have the private key side of this. You have to be able to have that. And generally, when we're installing things on a mobile device, we may not have the private key already on that mobile device. It may need to be assigned or presented or installed on that mobile device. If you're in an enterprise, that's often done using a mobile device manager, an MDM. But this could also be done by somebody sending you an email with the private key. That's not often done. Maybe integrated into the email system that you're using. That's very common to see as well. But anytime that you're not able to see or decrypt the email that's there, it's probably an issue with your encryption keys. So you're going to want to absolutely be able to work with those and understand how to work through those pieces. This is one where, as I mentioned, is important in the 902 exam that you know about the encryption and the decryption of these pieces. Now, if you are watching this for continuing education units, then you will want to make a note of the keyword for this month's study group, which is mobile device manager. Make sure that you go to either the top or the bottom of the Professor Messer website, click on the Contact Us link that happens to be at the top or the bottom. And in that Contact Us, make sure you specify that this is the March 2016 study group. It's the A+ study group, and that the code word, the keyword for this study group is Mobile Device Manager. And then I will send you an email with a digital signature that gives you 1 hour of continuing education units for watching this either live or on a replay, either one of those. So let's see how we did with this particular answer. If you answer the mobile device does not contain the correct private key, the 66% of you got that one absolutely right. Well done with that one. It would not be that the wireless network passphrase is incorrect. If that was the case, you wouldn't be on the wireless network, and generally that has nothing to do with the email that you're receiving. The mobile device hardware is faulty. This would not be the issue. The hardware has nothing to do with me being able to decrypt my email. And the user's login credentials are incorrect. Nope, login credentials are fine. Your system is going to be able to download the email and be able to decrypt the email even if you didn't log in properly to the mobile device itself. Of course, if you were able to log in, that also has nothing to do with the encryption and decryption process either. It's all about the keys, and that's the piece that's so important with this. Encryption and decryption of these mobile devices obviously is in the news lately, and it's all about those keys and having that encryption and decryption key that is so important that makes all of these work. Let's do another question, shall we? I think I gave you a sneak peek into what this one might be. This one, definitely one that is dealing with the 901 exam. I guess technically this could also be in the 902 the 801 exam as well. I'm thinking back, and I believe it is. Yes, it is for these. This is one where being able to work through these pieces, I have some options for you. So 2 of these share the same physical connector type. Which 2 are they? Is it HDMI, Thunderbolt, DisplayPort, Serial, Mini DisplayPort, or SATA? So it's going to be 2 of these. You need to pick 2 for this particular example and being able to work through it. Which of these 2 interfaces share the same physical connector type? I want to be able to work through those pieces and understand those. On a mobile device, we're not dealing with individual, when we're talking about individual emails, it's outside the scope of BitLocker, it's outside the scope of VFS. That type of encryption is something specific to the application. So it's specific to the email application you're using. Whether you're using BitLocker or EFS is irrelevant. You could have no BitLocker and no EFS and still have encrypted emails. Or you could have encrypted emails that are stored in encrypted files via EFS. Or you could have encrypted emails that are on a BitLocker encrypted volume. It's kind of a double encryption with those pieces and being able to work through them. This is a good example of doing this. So in the chat room also, I'll answer. Somebody says, are there any plans in the future for a prime time study group? This is a prime time study group. You just don't live in the right part of the world. So that's the challenge I have, of course, is many people watch these study groups from many places in the world. We've pretty much decided on Wednesdays at noon Eastern time as the study groups. This is the best time for the study groups, but I don't have any plans currently to change that. I think this will pretty much be what it is going forward. But of course, you can always watch the replays. So I always make them available immediately afterwards. The replays are available to watch. So that's one example. Yes, you could move. That's probably not very practical, is it? I agree that I can never pick a time that's going to be best for everybody, I'm afraid. So that's just the challenge we run into. Let's see how we did with this one. So I guess we're really looking for the 2 highest percentages. In this case, you yourself will know which 2 you chose. It's hard for me to see in this view which 2 you chose. And of course, we have a 3-way tie for first. That's not exactly what I was shooting for. We have Thunderbolt, DisplayPort, and Mini DisplayPort is kind of the top 3. And then the bottom 3, I guess you could say, are HDMI, Serial, and SATA. So which one of these would it be? Let's have a look at these different formats. The ones that you will run into that have exactly the same connector type, because it's designed that way, is both Thunderbolt and Mini DisplayPort. Now, this particular screenshot shows the Mini DisplayPort cable. It shows the Mini DisplayPort connector on this device. But if this was a Thunderbolt connector, it would look exactly the same, and that's by design. You want to be able to take all of these older Mini DisplayPort video connectors and plug them into Thunderbolt. In fact, it's part of the Thunderbolt specification that it effectively has the Mini DisplayPort video and audio in it, but then there's also a data component to it as well. That's what the Thunderbolt adds to this. Effectively adds tons of bandwidth and much more data capabilities. So you're able to plug in. If you see a Thunderbolt interface, it's also a Mini DisplayPort interface. You can use that as video in almost every circumstance you'll run into. There's some minor differences in types of displays that you might be able to use on that. That's certainly one you need to know about with those pieces. The Mini DisplayPort and the Thunderbolt makes it very easy also for cables. If you already have some Mini DisplayPort cables around and you got a Thunderbolt device, you can use the same cables. Works great. Same interface, and allows you to have all of those higher speeds and being able to work through all of those pieces. So for those of you that did answer on this one, if you answered Thunderbolt, you did not get that one correct. The correct answers are DisplayPort C and Mini. Or excuse me, Thunderbolt is correct. Mini DisplayPort. It's C that's not correct. If you answered B and E, it'd be absolutely correct. That's what I get for trying to do 12 things behind the scenes while I'm trying to explain something at the same time. So if you answered on this one, just as a review, Thunderbolt and Mini DisplayPort, got that one absolutely correct. Well done with that one. There is so much in the CompTIA exam. People ask me all the time, one of the most frequently asked questions I get is, how do I know what to study for the exam? So if you are studying for your 800 series exam, your 900 series exam, or anything else, go through and download the exam objectives. CompTIA I think, has the most comprehensive exam objectives in the information technology industry for these certification exams. Nobody else comes close to the detail that they provide in these exam objectives. And they are extensive with their exam objectives. It's almost a little bit crazy how much information is in here. I'm going to give you an example of this. I'm going to pull up the 901 exam objectives that I have just so you can get a feel for what's in here. They recently changed the format of these, so you may see that they look a little bit different. They're certainly not as functional as the old ones, but they contain exactly the same information. Somebody even this week, there was something I read that they had pulled the 902 exam objectives from their website. They did not. They were out there. I don't know what people were saying. And nothing has changed with them. They're exactly the same. But you can see it breaks down, for instance, in section 1.1, given a scenario, configure settings and use BIOS UEFI tools on a PC, firmware upgrades, flash BIOS, BIOS component information, break down BIOS configurations, built-in diagnostics, monitoring, and all the sub-information you need to know. That's just in a one section that you need to know on this exam. So let's go to section 1.2, 1.3, 1.4. This goes on for pages and pages and pages and pages. So if you need to know what's on the exam, this is it. If you can go through everything that's in the exam objectives and start checking off everything that you know, and you check off everything that's in here, you're going to pass your exam. It's that easy. You know everything that they would possibly ask you, and they don't tend to go outside the scope of this very often. Even if they did, how much farther outside the scope could they possibly go? If you know everything that's in here, you're going to pass. They also give you a list of acronyms you need to know. So here are the things you'll run into. They give quite a comprehensive list of those as well. You can see all of those. So now we're into, how many pages is this? 19 pages long. They even explain if you want to set up your own lab, here's everything that you would need to set up a lab to be able to pass your 901 exam. It's kind of nice to be able to have that flexibility as well. So make sure you use those as your checklist and you're able to take advantage of that really nice functionality. Well, of course, we've come to an hour of our study group. We've now hit the end, but there's more of this to come into the future. I do one of these a month. And of course, if you'd like to join us next time live, you can join us on April the 6th. That is a Wednesday at 12 noon Eastern time to be able to participate live. If you're watching this on a replay, you can't participate with the Socrative. There's nothing to punch in for the answers. So being here live does give you the flexibility to be able to do that. Now, if you are here live, feel free to also stick around for the second half. I'll open up the phone lines and take questions from the chat room, and we'll be able to discuss those things as well. So now we've kind of come to the end, haven't we? Of course, as I mentioned, you go out to professormesser.com/Twitter/YouTube. You can't even see it there with my big head in the way for these pieces. My course notes, again, are at A+CN, professormesser.com/A+CN. Thanks again to GTS Learning for the live labs. Those guys are awesome with the flexibility that they have in providing labs across A+, Network Plus, Security Plus, and much more. Great capabilities and functionality there. And of course, we do this all the time. Next week at this time and channel, we will be doing a Network Plus study group. A week after that is a Security Plus study group. So there's always something, it seems, going on. If you want to know what's happening next, you can always go to professormesser.com/calendar and learn what's going on with those as well. Well, we've come to the end of this first hour. As I mentioned, stick around. We'll do another hour where we'll just answer any question from the chat room. Otherwise, we'll see you next month on the study group. Thanks for attending. We'll see you then, everyone. Thanks. Wow. Yeah, that was kind of fast, wasn't it? That was a lot in a very short period of time to have all those things there. Let's see if I can get the phone lines going, shall we? How do we do this again? How does this work? Well, we can call in to do this. Let's start a show. Let's start the show. And let's call into the show. Let's see, you're going to be able to hear this, and I don't necessarily want you to hear it. So let's see how we do.
Thank you for.
Oh, it's loud. Okay, yes. All right. I'm getting there. I'm typing things.
Enter your 6-digit.
Well, I'm going to do that. Let's see how this goes.
Welcome.
Welcome. Welcome. That's how I know things work, because the computer tells me that it does. So I do have the phone lines open. If you would like to call in, you can absolutely do so. The phone lines available toll-free in the U.S. and over Skype for 0 minutes on Skype at +1 855 785 RJ45. That's 855-785-7545. I'll also take questions from the chat room if you have it there, to have that on these pieces. There is so much to be able to go through on these exams that we seem to go through an hour so quickly that I'm not able to even answer all the real questions you seem to be sending in every month. So I apologize if I didn't get to yours, but there's plenty that we can do on being able to work through those pieces. Let's take a sip of a warm beverage and see if we can make it through as long as we can today. There is, as I mentioned, I finished all of my 900 series videos over the past month. So if you're someone who is studying for your 900 series exam, everything is out there. All the 901, all the 902. In fact, I'll bring up the page so you can see it. I really need to bring this up in a different browser because I'm looking at 12 different things at one time. So you'll be able to see this, and I can make it bigger so you can see this. Okay, this is good. I'm going to flip over, not to that screen, but to this screen. There we go. So my training course, 901 and 902, there are 143 videos, 17 hours and 26 minutes. It is extensive. This is by far the most extensive A+ course I've ever created. It's got better graphics than I've ever had. It's got better pictures than I've ever had in my training courses. They just keep getting better and better and better all the time. I'm really pleased with how this turned out all the way through section 5.5 of the 902, and all my study group replays are in here as well at the bottom of the screen. So you can always go to the Professor Messer website. There's an A+ training, and you can go right to my free 900 series A+ videos are right there at the top. And of course, there's a main link from the main page as well. So that's there. So plenty to pour through and be able to work with those. Let's go to the calls though, and see if we can talk to some folks. This is the 956 area code. Are you there, caller? Are you there, caller? I can hear you. You're listening to the stream, but you're not listening to me. Are you there, caller? Hi. Are you there, caller? 956 area code? Nope. Gave up. Dropped out. So let's try another 937 area code. Are you there, caller?
Yes, I'm here.
Hey, what's your name?
My name is Denver.
Hey, how are you doing? Thanks for calling. What kind of question we have for us today?
I have a question about, I watched all the videos for the 801, 220, 801, but is it totally different between the 801 and the 802, or excuse me, 901 and then, hold on one second, let me turn this down real quick.
You sound like I've sounded over the last month with trying to put together all these videos.
Yeah. Is there a big difference between the, 220, 801 and 802 and the 220, 901 and the 220, 902? There's both a big the comparisons. There's a lot that is the same. Probably the vast majority of the content is exactly the same. But there's also a significant amount of information that is completely different. If you go to professormesser.com/FAQ, one of the first questions at the very top is a question on what's the difference between the 220, 801, 802 and the 220, 901, 902. And I created both a document that describes the difference in text, so you can go through in very much detail. All right, in section 901, here's what's different. In section 901 domain 2, here's what's different. And then I've also got a video that you could watch that also describes the process as well, because you don't want to miss the things that are different. There's enough different on the 900 series exam that if you're using older study materials, you're not going to do well on the 900 series. So make sure that the study materials you use match up exactly with the version of the exam that you plan to take. because there's enough there that you could definitely not do well on an exam because you didn't get Windows 8 content, you didn't get Mac OS content, you didn't get Linux content, you didn't learn about all the new hardware. And in fact, if you learn the 800 series, there's things they removed. So you don't have to know about RAM bus memory. You don't have to know about PATA drives. There's so much that's changed with technology. You don't have to know about floppy drives anymore. So it's no use learning that if you're going to take the 900 series exam.
Okay, because I noticed that on the preview or the 801, they have floppy drives and everything, and I was like, why do I need to know this stuff?
Right.
When we don't even do this stuff.
It's remarkable how fast PC technology changes. When the 800 series exams came out, we were just phasing away from floppy drives, but then they phased out on almost immediately, and then for years we had to keep memorizing it. So I'm glad it's gone.
Okay. Okay, well, that's all the questions I had.
That's great.
I'm gonna eventually take this test when I get the money to take it, and then when I think I'm ready to take it, because
That's great. If other questions come up or other things you're trying to figure out, always give us a call back or send me a message at the top or bottom of my website at the Contact Us link. Okay.
I appreciate that.
Thanks for calling. There is also, for those of you that are working through the A+ certification, you're trying to figure out which one should I take. If you're just starting along these lines, take the 900 series. Don't go back and take the older 800 series. Especially since the 800 series is going to be retiring at the end of June. So you don't want to have to be under the gun to get this finished as quickly as possible. Let's go to the 918 area code. Are you there, caller? What's your name?
Adam.
Hey, Adam. Thanks for calling. What can we do for you?
I have a question. My question is, should I have a job before taking the A+, or wait till after I get the A+?
Well, ultimately, the question on whether you need a job or not, it revolves around you and the scenario. A lot of people look at a certification exam as something that might be able to replace some other piece of their resume, and it doesn't.
Right.
Just like you need an education, you need experience in a position in a job that you have currently. You need certifications as well to add to your resumes, but all these things work together. Anytime you have the opportunity to get any type of job and get some type of working experience, especially at the beginning of your IT career, is incredibly useful. My first jobs that I had when I was in high school, I worked literally in a blueberry field, and that was like agricultural grunt type work. I worked in back when there were once these videotapes that movies were on, I worked in a store that rented these physical tapes to people, and they would take them home and watch them and bring them back. It was a remarkable technology. So I worked in this video rental store where we did this. And that was when I first started saying, okay, well, I need some type of job. I show up every day. I can convince somebody that I know how to be a good worker, and then I can apply that to other things. And eventually I was able to get entry-level jobs working in my case, it was at a university doing mainframe operations, which was kind of the grunt work for mainframes. Anytime you're able to get any type of job experience, I think is useful. So don't wait on a certification to get your jobs. Your certification might help you when you go into your interview, because you can say, I also have these certifications, and they may, if it's somebody who really recognizes those, they'll go, okay, good. That might help you get a leg up on somebody else who's trying to get a position as well. Take advantage of that. Your certifications can really help you out in that scenario.
Right. My second question is, I've been watching your videos for the 901.
Great.
And I was wondering, I was planning on taking it about March 10th, because your videos actually, it actually covers a lot that's on the objective.
Oh, yes.
And I was going to take the test about March 10th. I was just...
Are you using other study materials as well? Do you have a 901 or 902 book? Do you have other Q&A guides that you're using? Is there anything else you're taking advantage of?
I actually have the only other books that I have is the 801.
Okay. Well, at least that's something. It kind of gets you most of the way there. As I was mentioning on the last call, there's a big overlap between the two, but you just have to keep in mind that there were things added to the 900 series exams that aren't going to be in your 801 book. And there were things that were removed from the 800 series that you're never going to see in the 900 series. You might want to go out to my frequently asked questions on my website and look through the list of those things. And my recommendation for everyone, and it certainly applies here, is use the exam objectives as your checklist. If you come across a topic that's not in your book and you see it in a video, make sure you get more information on that so you're able to know exactly what you'll be expecting when you sit for the exam.
Okay, I will do that.
And I think you'll be in good shape. I go through those exam objectives, and you'll notice my exam objectives match up exactly with the videos because that's what I did. I went through CompTIA's exam objectives. I literally checked off on their list when I made a slide so that I knew I took everything that they were asking for, and I made a video of it. I try not to leave any stone unturned. They can, of course, ask you questions that are outside the scope of those exam objectives, but they don't tend to do that. So if you follow that structure, whether you're using my videos or anything else, I think you'll be fine.
Awesome.
Great.
That answers my question.
Thanks for calling, Adam.
Thank you.
The exam objectives, I say it all the time. It is so important that you get your hands on those exam objectives because of that. Becomes incredibly important. Let's go to the 209 area code. Are you there, caller? What's your name?
Yeah, hi. My name's Alex.
Hey, Alex. Thanks for calling.
Yeah, hey. So I had a question about the BIOS and how it's installed. From what I remember, the BIOS is typically installed on a read-only memory. If it's a read-only memory, what happens when we flash it? How does it change that memory? Like, how does it get updated?
In fact, if you go back and look at, I think most pictures in most books, and I even have, I think, one of these in my videos, shows an old ROM chip, a BIOS ROM, and some of the BIOS ROM chips literally have written on them BIOS ROM, and it's a individual chip that's on your motherboard. In fact, I'm going to try to bring up one of my old videos that might even have one of these in it. I don't know if I can find one real quick. It's got one of these old pictures of a BIOS ROM on it. Here I have one that I'll bring up on my screen. You can't see it obviously because you're watching here. Oh, what happened to here we go. So the older motherboards, and I mean really old motherboards, have a physical chip that is that the BIOS lives in. And this is when you start your computer, it goes to this chip, pulls the instructions it needs to start your computer. Well, these days, as you've probably seen, you can install an application or run a program that updates the BIOS that's in your computer. Well, if that's the case, and this is ROM, which is read-only memory, what is happening there? Well, back in the older days, when you needed to upgrade the BIOS, you physically pulled the chip out and you put a new chip in. That didn't really work that well. That's not very scalable. So what you'll find is all of the new motherboards, not most of them, all of your new motherboards actually have a flash BIOS. There's a flash memory on the motherboard itself, just like a USB key or a flash drive that you would use. It's flash memory that's just embedded onto the motherboard, and that's where the BIOS lives. And that makes it very easy when you need to upgrade the BIOS. You simply run a program that updates the flash memory, and you don't have to physically swap out any chip. So although we still sometimes call it the BIOS ROM, or we still call it CMOS, there's really no CMOS that this is being stored in. It's really not a physical read-only memory. It's really pulling it on a flash memory that's on your motherboard.
Okay, and that would be a EEPROM, right?
It would.
Is that what it would be?
In fact, on my 901 videos, I think I might have a picture on my 901 videos of flash memory that's on a motherboard that I was messing around with. And that is the EEPROM memory, the electronically erasable programmable read-only memory that uses that. Absolutely correct. And one other nice part about that is that it will maintain that even when your system is powered off, because it's like a USB drive. It's the same technology as the flash memory in a USB drive, so you don't have to have a battery always maintaining it. You don't have to keep everything up to date. It's able to store all your configuration data and not lose anything even when you're not plugged into the wall with power.
Okay, that was my question. I appreciate it.
Great.
Thank you.
Thanks for calling. There's a couple of folks were asking about the BIOS and the CMOS when we were in the chat room. I think it was last night or the night before. You run into those kind of challenges all the time. Let's go to 956 area code. Are you there, caller? What's your name?
My name is Jeremiah.
Hey, Jeremiah. Thanks for calling.
Yes, I'm here at South Texas Business Education Technology Academy, and we're a high school that is actually working on completing the 801 and 802 examination. Our question was, what is your suggestion for how long we should take between tests? Like, how long do you think should we wait?
Well, if you're working on your 801, 802, there are two schools of thought. One school of thought I agree with, the other one I don't in most cases. If you're somebody who knows this technology cold, you've been working with it for years. You've been imaging your own computers in an enterprise. You've been maintaining desktop computers in a company. You're someone who is very familiar with operating systems and very familiar with hardware. You could probably very easily walk into an A+ certification exam and take both of the exams at the same time and do very well. In fact, many books that I've read say that you should do that anyway, regardless of what your experience happens to be. I don't necessarily agree with that, though. I think a much more prudent way to address the 801 and the 802 is to learn everything you need for the 801 and take it individually, and then shift gears and learn everything you need to know for the 802 and take the 802 individually, because I think that will give you your best chance to get the best possible score on both of those. Everybody's a little bit different, of course, and I'm not saying that this is something that works for everybody globally, but if I was going to take it, and in fact, I know this stuff, and I took them on separate days for that very reason, because there's an idea that, and in fact, it's the valid one, that is the 801 kind of tells you what you need to know, and the 802 exam, the last domain, is you need to troubleshoot what you need to know. Well, before you forget what's in the 802, you need to troubleshoot from the 801. You need to troubleshoot what's in the 802. So I understand people saying, yes, take them both at the same time so you can have all that stuck in your brain at the same time and kind of get it all out at one individual piece. But there's so much that's different between those two exams. And just the Windows information itself is so big and so comprehensive that I think it's worthwhile to put that to the side and deal with it individually, rather than trying to take them both simultaneously and deal with having to take all of that at one single time. It just seems like a difficult thing to have to go through and figure out those pieces. I wouldn't do it that way. I would take them individually, and I usually recommend to do that. As an aside, I know you didn't mention the 900 series, but the 900 series exams are structured in a way where they really are standalone exams. So other people that are watching this stream that are working on their 900 series exams, the 901 has what you need to know and the troubleshooting in the same exams. You can effectively take your 901 and forget all of that information and focus on the 902, which I think is a much better structure. It took a long time to get to that point. But that's kind of my perspective. It depends on the individual, but if I usually will recommend for most people, take them separately and save your brain that much more having to learn and having to remember and having to get it out. I think you'll do better overall with your scores.
All right. Well, that sounds fantastic. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Jeremiah, and good luck with all those exams you're taking.
All right. Thank you. Bye.
There is a lot to know across the 801, the 802. I just wouldn't do that. That would drive me crazy. It's bad enough getting there once and having that there and trying to figure out all those pieces. Let's go to the 661 area code. Are you there, caller? What's your name?
Hello, Professor.
Hello. Hi. Who's calling?
Today? Yeah, my name is Husam.
Hey, thanks for calling. What can we do for you?
Thank you. Because today my birthday, I got all the party and I look for the study group.
Very nice. Happy birthday.
I have one. Thank you. I have one for the group. Oh, I passed the 801.
Nice.
It's maybe difficult for memorize all of things for this. When I started studying 802, I need to tell me if this 802 easier than 801 or harder? Because I look, you just need to tell me this is it's right or wrong. Yeah, I see 802. It's maybe easier something like 801.
Like most things,
I'm right.
I think it depends. In fact, the question for those of you listening, I know we were getting a little bit of breakup with the audio. The real question is the 801 has this amazing amount of memorization you have to know, and you got through the 801, thankfully. Now the 802, but is the 802 easier or harder than the 801? And it really depends on your personal experience with these technologies. I think from a difficulty perspective, that the two exams are pretty comparable. The type of questions that you're getting, the process you go through, the difficulty level of the questions themselves are pretty much the same between the two. But obviously, the technologies are very different between the two. The 801 focuses a huge amount on hardware and networking and mobile devices. And then you shift gears, and on the 802, there's almost all Windows and security. And there's a little bit of mobile device in there as well. So it's a very different set of technologies. It's a different thing that you have to know. And I think a lot of people like that there's not as much rote memorization on the 802, but there is a lot more that you have to know about working with the operating system. So if you're somebody who's worked a lot with Windows, you're very familiar at the command line, you've been using it for years, you've done your own installations, you've done your own migrations and upgrades, you're going to find the 802 and the 902 are much easier than the 801 or the 901. But if you're somebody who's been working with hardware for a long time, you've been building your own computers, and you haven't been doing a lot with the operating systems, you may find the 801 and the 901 are similar, are much easier for you and being able to work through those. So I guess the answer is that it depends, but I think the answer is also don't worry so much about the difficulty level and really just focus on the exam objectives, and I think you'll be fine.
Okay. Okay. Because I asked you this question because you know the exam you want you to understand what you do, not memorize everything. I think this. I don't know.
I would agree with you. I think the 801 is much more memorization. I think the 901 is much more application. You have to really use the operating system. You have to click on things on the screen. So it's a different way of having to know the content. And I think for a lot of people, it's an easier way to know the content. So you may find the 802 is easier as well.
Okay. Thank you very much. I appreciate it. Thank you very much.
Very welcome, and happy birthday again.
Thank you. Goodbye.
There is, I guess it really depends on where you're coming from, what you're doing, and how much you know about those technologies and being able to work through them. Let's go to the 505 area code. Are you there, caller? What's your name?
Hi, how's it going? My name's Jacob.
Hey, Jacob. Thanks for calling.
Yeah, I was just wondering, I'm kind of new to coding and programming, and just how computers work. And I was just wondering if you could give me any tips on going about learning pretty much the command line and networking and just how computers work.
There's probably so much to talk about along exactly those two lines. And you spoke about two different things. You mentioned programming, development side of things, and then there's also the IT side of things. And in the computer world, we tend to separate these into two very broad categories. For people that are doing application development, you're writing your own apps, you're learning how to program. We tend to put that in a category called computer science. And if you look at a university or a school or even just online resources, they tend to talk about computer science as people that do a lot of development. The other broad categorization of technology is called information technology, and you can kind of think about this as everything else. So people that are maintaining databases, people that are installing file servers, people that are fixing computers, people that are understanding how to use the command line of the operating system, people who are working in a data center that are putting clusters of servers together, that are maintaining web servers. That is information technology. In fact, one of my pet peeves lately is that in the political world of the United States, there's a big emphasis to get people to do more development work. And programming work is incredibly important. I do development work myself. I do a little bit of programming. One of the first companies I ever created was a software development company. I think that's great. But it's different than IT because in IT, I worked in IT almost all my career where I was maintaining operating systems, servers, databases. I was working a lot with networks and working with network security. I really didn't have to know how to do much programming. So it's a very different world of how you think about problems and solve problems than it is on the logical side of computer science. But there's tons of resources available. Of course, the A+ certification is really your entry level into information technology. From a programming perspective for computer science, there's a lot of really good online development resources on the internet that can also get you started on those. I think one of the, let me see if I can find the ones that I used in the past. One that I've often go back to is one called Code Academy, which is codeacademy.com. That's a good starting point. I think that's always a good one to go to. I like it. I like it too.
I was wondering, where would I go to learn more about the command line for like Windows?
Well, that's another one where I would really focus in two areas. The CompTIA A+ has a lot of good command line that's in there. If you're really focused on Windows, Microsoft certifications really focus on the command line of Windows and go into great detail. They have a number of certifications that can train you on how to manage and do upkeep of the Windows desktop operating system. So if you're somebody, I think it was the 70-685 or the 686, I think it's the 685, is Windows 7 desktop management. So there's a certification that really focuses on how to keep your Windows 7 machine up and running and happy. And of course, they have similar certifications for Windows 10 as well for just keeping the desktop running, understanding how to use things at the command line, how to perform functions at the command line and use it. There's a ton of that available on the Microsoft side as well. A+, I think, is your first foray into the Windows command line. It gets you very comfortable with some of the most popular command lines. But if you're really wanting to go deep, you really can't beat the Microsoft certifications.
All right, cool. Thanks for answering my questions.
Thanks for calling, Jacob. I appreciate it. There's so much even to go through. Yeah, a lot of people in the command line, a lot of people are doing a lot of Python these days. There's so much with the type of virtualization and being able to manage virtual technologies that's very focused on Python. Also a lot of Perl along those lines, but I think Python's the cooler one that people tend to focus on and get a familiar piece of that here as well. Let's go back to the phones. Gosh, thanks for, you've been holding for 15 minutes. 864 area code. Are you there, caller? Are you there, caller? 864. Pick up the phone. You've been on hold for so long. I apologize. Are you there? Are you there? I want to stick you back in the queue just in case maybe something was muted or maybe something was not quite right. We'll put you back in the queue. Is it going to put you back in the queue? Maybe not. Maybe the problem's on my side. Let's try a different one. The 214 area code. Are you there, caller?
I am, Professor.
Hey,
Thank
what's
you
your
for
name?
taking my call. My name is Ty.
Hey, Ty.
I am a long-time study grouper, first-time caller.
Oh, great. Thanks for calling. And thanks for watching.
Thank you for putting this on. So to sort of piggyback on what Jacob was asking, mine was a similar question, but he kind of took mine, so I want to refine it.
Sure.
My issue is really honed in on proper syntax for the command line. A lot of times what I run into is, I'm definitely memorizing. I've passed my 801. I'm about to take my 802. And so I'm definitely memorizing just the various commands that they're giving me.
Yep.
But it hasn't quite, like, I haven't noticed the pattern yet. Like, I haven't yet recognized the rhyme or reason for the netstack command, where it's minus A
yes.
and then a space and
right.
then something else. And then, or like, I've seen it where like the /, there's a space between the word, and then other times the / is right against the word. And I haven't found any resources that point to sort of proper grammatical syntax for command line stuff.
Right. And your question is does such a thing exist? And how in the world are you supposed to be able to do this if there isn't a single format? That's probably where you're leading.
Yes.
with all of these.
Yes.
The horrible answer to this is there sometimes is no rhyme or reason. Sometimes we use a slash, sometimes we use a dash. It's all up to how the developer of the utility managed to create his delimiters when he created the utility to begin with, which, by the way, this is not a great answer. This just means it's harder than you actually thought it was. And quite honestly, the netstat command is probably used one of the best examples because netstat is a broad command. It does 100 different things. CompTIA says you need to know what the netstat command is, but they don't tell you what flags you need to know or the functions that you need to know. I picked some of the most popular ones to put in my videos, but who knows what they might ultimately ask you on the exam. And the netstat command is so broad that if you went online and you started looking for people who were wanting to know more about how to use the netstat command, professionals that have been in the industry for 20 years are still finding new things to do with the netstat command. So this isn't, and trying to memorize it on top of that. So this isn't something that that you're running into that's unique to you. This is unique to the industry and how we work with these different utilities. Every utility is a little bit different. It uses a different syntax. There's a different nomenclature. Sometimes you put the source file first and the destination file second. Sometimes you put the destination file first and the source file second. It just depends on the utility. Most of the time with Windows utilities, you're using dashes and you're using first file first, second file second. It just doesn't always work out that way. So you ultimately have to memorize the structure for each individual command to have any hope at keeping it straight in your brain, which is obviously what you're trying to get through on the 801 exam or the 802 exam.
Yeah. Thank you for that. My second question has to do with the Windows management consoles, the various consoles that are available in Windows.
Yes.
Previous to studying for the 802, I guess it speaks to my my lack of knowledge, even in the industry. I've never seen the management console until essentially now. And more importantly, like I've never seen it used, even by my mentors and some of my college professors. They don't. I mean, is this something that, in your experience, you have commonly leaned on and utilized as a tool to sort of help troubleshoot and everything else, or is this something that's kind of becoming more prevalent these days, like similar to how CompTIA is now focusing more on Linux and Mac program or software and operating systems? Is the management console something that's now gaining popularity?
I'll give it to you from my perspective. I started doing this particular thing, whatever this weird experiment is that I'm living in. I started doing this full time about a year ago. Prior to that, for the previous 20 years in the industry, I was a systems engineer. I was somebody going from company to company to company, primarily doing pre-sales engineering, but post-sales as well, with very technical products, things like protocol analyzers and network management utilities and security products, next generation firewalls, implementing very complex infrastructure pieces of equipment into people's environments. And I would have the advantage and the luxury of talking to and working with the Windows professionals at all of these different companies. And I mean, I've gone to some of the smallest companies, a small company with a small group of people, maybe one person handling the network, up to very large multi-billion-dollar international conglomerates and working with those folks as well. And I'll tell you that everybody just runs the utility they need to run at the time. If you need to take care of a service, they'll pop open to the run line and do services.msc and bring it up and run their service and close it out. Or they'll go to pop open a command line to run a separate program. They'll look at a disk utility to run this, to see what's happening on these drives, and they'll all run them independently. Very few people, and I'm trying to think back, probably nobody was actually opening up the Microsoft Management Console or even computer management. Sometimes computer management we would use, but very rarely to be able to do these things. There were certain products I've worked with in the past that were able to integrate with the Microsoft Management Console, and you could load things in as a plugin. that was a very rare occasion. And in fact, it's kind of hard to find those these days. Most everybody has a separate utility that you load up, or you're just loading up the utility you need at the moment and shutting it down and going somewhere else. In very few instances, somebody would bring up the computer management console so they could hop between user accounts, services, and they could adjust things. They could set up a service, have the service log in as a user, very quickly click back to the users, define the username and password properly, use that same password in the services, and allowed you to jump around very quickly. But it's very rare to find somebody who's actually using it that way. And in most cases, you don't really need to use it that way, and you don't even need a lot of the other tools that are in there. So why would you bring it up to begin with? I think it's more of from CompTIA's perspective, it's more of a central place that you can use, and you could build your own Microsoft Management Console, which is what I kind of think they're trying to explain to you, but I just don't think a lot of people use it that way. Well, I know a lot of people don't use it that way because I've watched them. So no, it's not used that way a lot. It's one of those things you learn because the functionality's there. It's built into Windows. It's important that you know that it's there, but a lot of people just don't use it.
Okay. And can I bother you with just one more really quick
sure.
question?
Yeah.
Okay. So my mentor is trying to also push me more towards security.
Okay.
And I'm scared to death of security for this one reason, and this is just my own theory. Reason being, with all of like the database breaches that have been going on, I mean, we see it all in the news, and it's becoming more and more prevalent. My thought is every time I see Sony got hacked into, or Target's databases, or Home Depot's, or whomever, Blue Cross Anthem or whoever, every time I see that, I think to myself, there's a tech person, there's a security person that got fired. Like, there's somebody that was asleep at the helm and heads are rolling. And that's why I don't like, I'm more, as far as like job security standpoint, in your experience, did you ever sort of hear people talk about like if a data breach happens, do they just remove that entire IT team and bring in somebody else that can ensure that they'll protect their databases and things like that? Or am I just like being...
Well, I'll give you my perspective, because the last 7 or so years of my career prior to doing this full time was in IT security. I was implementing next generation firewalls and doing a ton with security, exclusively with security departments in these organizations, some very large, some very small. So I was able to talk to them. I was able to see what happens when a breach occurs. And these breaches, fortunately, are not as common as you might think. Fortunately, the breaches themselves are things that are very unusual. And when they do occur, it is very circumstantial as to what happens to the people who are working there. Sometimes a breach will occur and there's nothing the security team could have done to prevent that breach from happening because of the method that was used to get in at the organization. Sometimes the Target breach is a good example of this. The bad guys initially got into the organization because of a configuration that should not have been set up that way. And I would expect that somebody in that organization probably doesn't have a job because they went against the policies that were previously defined in the organization to prevent this exact occurrence from happening. So it's going to depend. If you went outside the scope and you were doing things on the shortcut and you weren't really doing things properly with security, then obviously you probably deserve not to be working there any longer. But if you did all the right things and the bad guy simply found a way in using something that you knew could possibly be a breach, but your organization made a decision not to provide a certain level of protection to that content, or you didn't know that there was going to be a breach from that particular kind of thing, well, there's nothing you could have done about that. And obviously you're not going to, an organization's not going to generally dismiss people from working there for not, for doing something had no ability to stop in the first place. So it really just depends. Unfortunately, a lot of these really big breaches that have occurred, some were things that were completely preventable. Others, nobody knew how the bad guy got in until they finally went back and figured it out. And it was something that they had no way to protect against at the time. So I loved working in security. I thought it was interesting. I thought the technology is moving at a very rapid pace. There's tons of career opportunities in IT security. And it's something that is most of the time very, I wouldn't say very boring, but you have a very set group of things that you're doing. You have policies you're creating, you're gathering information from log files, you're doing analysis of firewalls, you're implementing change control with those, you're putting in VPNs, you're doing multi-factor authentication implementations, you're working on integrated login databases and the security of those things, you're looking at applications and the way they're working across the network to see if they're secure. There's so many things associated with this that are not what people think about with IT security. Most people think IT security is you're doing pen testing. This is cool. It's sexy. We're going to do pen testing. A very tiny bit of IT security it has anything to do with penetration testing. Most of the time, you're just maintaining and keeping the systems secure, performing the patches that are coming through, doing the testing of those things. And it's a very safe, reliable, and satisfying career to get into. And it's one that once you know it, you're somebody who now knows the network cold. You have to know the network extremely well to work in IT security. So you've already gone through the ranks of switch management, router management, setting up infrastructure for your networking, maintaining that infrastructure. Now you're applying that knowledge into security. You don't want to get rid of those people. They know what they're doing. I worked with some of the smartest people I know because they really understood from the very bottom operating system all the way up into the security side. That's the people I'd love to work with. You don't want to fire them unless they really did something wrong. I love it. I recommend that a lot of people go into security. It's a great place to be.
Gotcha. You're tremendous, sir. I appreciate everything that you put out.
Thanks, Ty. I appreciate the support as well. Thanks for calling.
Thank you.
I had some of the best times doing the security stuff. It took kind of a long time to get there. Because you do have to get up through the ranks. You don't generally start in IT security. You generally start on networking or operating system, and you blend into it. And of course, there is computer science security, which is a completely different realm of keeping applications safe. I didn't really work along those lines. We had another call, 856 area code. Are you there, caller?
Hey, Professor Messer, this is Gene from Jersey. How are you?
Gene, I'm doing fine. How are you, sir?
Great. I had called several times. Professor Messer, once again, I just want to thank you for the job that you are doing. I, fortunately enough, just got a IT position.
Excellent.
Even without completing the 802 exam, which I should be completing at the end of March. The organization that I will be working for, I started out volunteering for approximately about a year. And the opening came up, and I was at the right place at the right time.
Nice.
And I just want to commend you for the job that you're doing, the videos that's reinforcing what I'm learning in different books. And I'm on my way. Thank you. My question is, Professor Messer, though, I'm still a little nervous, believe it or not, a multimeter. And it may sound strange. When I was younger, I stuck my finger in a socket. And I was one of them curious kids, and then I put something in a toaster. And fortunately enough, I'm still around.
Yeah, good for
so
you.
When it comes to, yes, very good for me and my family. And it's still that fear of testing a cable, Professor Messer.
Yep.
Now, I do know they have the receptacle tester for the outlet.
Yep.
I'm fine with that because I will not do that in the outlet. But I need to be able to get over that. Do you have a video with that, Professor Messer, that give me more confidence and a little more illustrations of what to do and not to do with the multimeter?
I don't think I have any specifically that kind of demonstrate the details of this. I understand exactly where you're coming from because whenever I plug a multimeter into a power outlet, it does give me pause because and I guess this is good. You do need to be very aware of power, and you need to be aware that this is something dangerous. And I think that's the reason we're still alive and kicking, is that we don't keep plugging things into the outlet that we're not supposed to. But I think a lot of it has to do with just getting used to using them. And I think using it on an outlet is a very good place to start. As long as you have a good multimeter, you've got good prongs. In my videos, I have pictures that are showing me connecting. I just plug the prongs right into the outlet, and I measure on the multimeter AC voltage, and it shows 120 volts coming out of the wall. That's a good place, I think, to start because get you comfortable with, we're just plugging something in. It's something that's very easy to see. You're comfortable doing it. You could even start this way by turning the outlet off, either at the breaker or if it's something that's powered from a switch. Plug in your multimeter connectors and then turn the switch back on or the breaker back on and watch what happens. And you can see, okay, well, there weren't any shocks, no sparks flew, nothing broke, and my multimeter shows 120 volts. Now I can pull it out of the socket and get comfortable. That's kind of what I did to get comfortable with using my multimeter. But very often we're looking at multimeters and we're working with them inside of a computer case. For example, being able to measure how much power, a DC power, is coming off of a computer power supply. And in one of my videos, I even have a picture of me on the 24-pin connector on the motherboard with one of the multimeter probes on a ground and the other multimeter probe on one of the 12-volt or 5-volt connectors, and I'm measuring what is the power between both of those, and it's flowing through the multimeter. But of course, as long as you're touching the plastic that's on these probes, you're fine. You're not touching any of the metal. And I think it's more of just becoming more accustomed to doing it. There are some great YouTube videos that I've referenced in the past. I don't know which ones they are offhand because there's so many, of course, to choose from, where people are going through the basic usage of a multimeter with power. And as long as you have a very good respect for the power that's there, and you're not wearing jewelry that's going to get into the computer, you're not touching anything else in the case, you're holding on to those probes, you're generally going to be okay because all the power is going to flow through your multimeter and you're in good shape. Whenever my qualification is, and I give this all the time for people, is that if you really don't feel comfortable working inside of a computer with the multimeter, don't do it. If you haven't gone through the training, you haven't watched the videos to see people do it, you're better off not, because there's enough power in there to really create a problem for you. You want to be as safe as possible. But I think if you follow some of those good best practices for using the multimeter, you're going to be fine inside of a computer case. There's not going to be any issue there for you being able to take advantage. And when you start learning how to use a multimeter on the power that's inside of your computer and the power that's on your outlets, you can gather a lot of great troubleshooting information. So it's a great skill to have. Don't be thrown too much by the fact that there's power there. Just follow the best practices, learn how to use the multimeter, and I think you'll be fine.
I appreciate that. I really love the example about the switch and outlet, or either the breaker. That's an excellent idea. Do you also have a video on VPN connections?
The VPN that's on the A+, the Network Plus, and the Security Plus is very high level. It doesn't go into the details of setting one up and configuring it and running it on Windows or other operating systems, which is kind of a shame. The previous job I was in, I did extensive SSL VPN and IPsec VPN implementations where you're really setting up certificates. You're setting up the IPsec VPN phase 1 and phase 2. There's passphrases and certificates that go with that. There's a whole process involved for getting that to do. And it's really intriguing. It's just outside the scope of A+, Network Plus, and Security Plus. And I think it's worthwhile to know how to do those things. It's just that there's no practical application of that you would need to know for the exams, at least not right now. Some of the Microsoft exams, I think, go into that a bit more, but just not the CompTIA exams, unfortunately.
Okay. Well, I appreciate all that you have done and shared, Professor Messer. Once again, I start tomorrow. He's giving me a chance to grow and learn, and once again to prepare for my 802. So
that's fantastic.
I'll keep you posted, and thank you so much. Yes, thank you.
Congratulations, Gene, and good luck with that.
Appreciate that, Dr. Messer. Take care.
Bye-bye. There's can't beat that, can you? You volunteer, the opening shows up, and you're right there. That's really what it's about, isn't it? Let's go to the 240 area code. Are you there, caller? What's your name?
Yes, my name is Kenny from Silver Spring, Maryland.
Hey, Kenny. Thanks for calling.
Yeah, thank you. I just want to thank you for all the work you do in the series and everything.
Very welcome, sir.
Exams.
Absolutely.
I have noticed something about, the knowledge series that just came out just now. And I did look on Amazon. I guess this is so new. There's not that much material out there yet because I see the books are starting to come out, but I guess not a lot of people know they're out there yet. But I just should I? I'm almost about to take the 801. Should I just concentrate on that, or just move it to 900 series?
It's a good question.
I get ready to 801, 801 too the next 2-3 weeks, and I know some of the stuff already, but I noticed that like you said, the difference between 801 and 900, like the floppies not there no more,
right.
and something's taken out,
right.
And I'm worried. It's would be the time to take the 802 because I know it expires in June, but I think I still could do it. But I just want to know from what do you think I should do?
I think that's really your challenge. It's really a timing thing more than anything for you. You're through the 801 materials. If you went this week and you took the 801 and you got through it, you would have until June the 30th to pass the 802, which may work fine. But of course, sometimes you don't have the studying time that you thought you did. Something happens in your world where now you can't study as much as you thought you'd be able to. Maybe you have to postpone it for some particular reason. And if you, for some reason, go past that June 30th date, you now have to start all the way over again with the 900 series. You can't use your 801. It's effectively worthless at that point, and you're now resetting back to the beginning. Obviously, a lot of the material that's on the 901 is very similar to the 801, but there is a lot that's different. Troubleshooting is on it, some other pieces. It might make more sense then, and I'm recommending for most people right now, before you take any exam at all, if you're already in the middle of it, you're already taking your 801, obviously go finish and take your 802. But if you haven't taken it yet, it might be a better use of your time and might give you more flexibility to take the 900 series so that you just don't have that time constraint that you would have with the retirement date being on June the 30th, because it seems far away, but as we all know, that really comes up really quick on us, especially when we're trying to take an exam like this. So I usually will recommend for people, especially right now, switch gears for you. You'll find the 901 has almost exactly the same content. There are a few extra interfaces, and there's troubleshooting on there, but a lot of the information will be very similar to what you've already gone through. And now you can shift gears and not have to worry about this time constraint and this deadline that is looming. And you can now be very relaxed on how you study for both the 901 and the 902. You are right. There's not a lot of 900 series books that are out, but all the big ones I think are out at this point. They have to go through this process with CompTIA that gets them certified to be a CompTIA book. So it takes additional time for the publishers to get them out there. But most publishers have them out there already. GTS Learnings is out there. I've seen 3 or 4 others. Obviously, not a lot of people have put their own ratings on it on Amazon because they're so new. But you can kind of go back to the previous books and look at the previous edition. They don't change a lot in the style and the content. So that may be a good way that you can at least see how good is this 900 series book.
Yeah, because I noticed the when I went to cut A+, I downloaded the 900 series in a black and white, but I noticed they upgraded to more a colorful subtext.
Yep.
So I printed that. It seemed like that one seems a lot more better than the black and white was. It seems like you really read through it and tell what you need to know, what you don't know. You question yourself, do I don't know this? Do I know that?
It certainly takes up less room on the page, and now you can. That's almost something that's a little easier to read as well. I get why they did that. Nothing changed though between the black and white version of the course information, exam information, and the color one. It's exactly the same content. In case anyone is wondering between the two formats, what did they change? They changed nothing. Same text.
Yeah, and I think I've noticed that they added more. I think you said it's like they added more. There's Linux now too, I think.
Right.
Some on the Apple software, so which is quite new. And I said, I've noticed a lot more companies start using Apple products now. So not a lot, but a lot more now with mobile devices and mobile devices. I noticed that in the 902 now.
Huge emphasis in mobile.
802.
Huge emphasis in Mac OS. Huge emphasis in Linux. Not as much as the Windows side of things, but you're right. The last place I worked, probably half the people in the organization were using Mac OS, and the other half were using Windows. So you're going to find more and more environments where it's a hybrid, and you're going to have to be able to support all those.
Yeah, and it's funny though. You mentioned about XP still been out there. I've seen Windows people still using Windows XP.
Oh, sure.
And that quite surprised me because I see more people. I still see people use it XP, but I see a lot of people still on Windows 7 or Professional, and they're not even on 8 yet. Because at home, I'm on my new laptop. I'm using Windows 10, and it's very nice.
Yep, I like Windows 10. If I look at my website, in fact, let me look at my users to my website, and I look at the browser and the operating system that they're using. For everybody who's listening in, and since you brought this up, let's have a look. For Windows is the vast majority of people hitting my site. And if I look at the different operating systems for Windows, Windows 7 is the vast majority of, not vast, it's the majority of people hitting my site with Windows are using Windows 7. Probably 52% of the people, 53% are using Windows, about 32% using Windows 10, and then combined probably about 12% using Windows 8. And just over 1% are using Windows XP. Interestingly enough, more Windows XP users than Vista, but only just barely. They're almost tied. But that gives you an idea that XP is still being used. I have thousands of sessions to my server in a month, all using Windows XP. It has not disappeared yet. It's going away, but it's not gone quite yet.
Yeah. Yes.
So there's a little bit of analytics to go with this.
Yes. Well, I think that's it. I mean, that's all I just want to ask about because, I'll just keep my fingers crossed and, get ready to take the test and that. And I think this place is so I can get a voucher, but there's a 10%.
Yep, ProfessorMesser.com/vouchers. Absolutely.
Okay. All right, I'll probably use that, and I think there's like a testing place near where I live, and I can take the test there. So I'm just keeping my fingers crossed and hope I pass.
Perfect. Good luck, Kenny. Let us know how it goes.
All right. Thank you.
Take care. There's that is the question that's probably most everyone asks is, which one do I take? Do I take the 901, take the 801? It's a good question. Let's go 305, South Florida. Are you there? What's your name?
Yes, I'm here. Caleb from Miami.
Hey, Caleb, thanks for calling.
A couple of questions. Thanks. I have had an A+ certification I took in 2012, and it lapsed in May because I did nothing. Didn't take any continuing education credits, and I wasn't using it at the time. But now I find myself in an IT position where I need it, and I'm studying for the A+ test. Is that my only option at this point, or is there anything I can do to continuing education credits to somehow recertify?
According to CompTIA, if you had, now let me clarify, the exam the certification you had before was the A+ exam. It was the A+ CE, which means you needed to renew in 3 years, or the exam was no longer valid. It expires after 3 years. Is that the one that you had?
Correct.
Yes. So according to CompTIA's website, once it expires, that's it. There's no chance of bringing it back or getting anything to renew that. You would have to take the A+ exam again to be able to get the A+ certification again. I think, though, you should give them a call just to see if there's anything that we might have missed, or if there's anything that they might be able to do to extend that particular time frame based on your particular circumstance. They may be able to do it. They may not. They may just say, sorry, it's 3 years. You wanted your exam again. You're going to have to retake it. Or they may be able to say, well, we can set it to this date, and then now you have to get it by this time to have the continuing education units. And it doesn't bode well because their website's pretty clear on this one. Once it expires, you're done. But they may be able to tell you, well, actually right now, if you took your Network Plus, we would renew your A+ and keep it valid. I don't know if they would or not, but it's certainly worth a phone call. It'd save you some time and some money.
Interesting. I appreciate that opinion. I think I'm going to try giving them a call. But
begging sometimes works very well. Begging and being nice.
I can be nice.
Yeah.
One last question, if I may. I have some referred to systems that I'm trying to just perform Windows 7 updates on. I just got them, and it's failing the updates at the install, and it always reverts back to the previous configuration. How do I troubleshoot that?
It's failing the update completely during the installation process?
Yeah, it will download the updates, it will install all of them, and during the reboot process, and it goes through, watching the percentage tick up. It gets to 98%, and all of a sudden it says Windows update failed. And
I am unfortunately painfully familiar with these kinds of situations, and it has to do probably with the Windows Updater and how it's doing those things. You might be able to manually download the updates. There is a updater reset process. I've not found that recently because I haven't had to go out and find it on the Microsoft website. There is one that can help get around some of these problems. There's probably also in the logs, it will tell you which one of these is failing during the update process, and you may be able to manually install it as well. Sometimes Microsoft will have a very specific troubleshooter for a specific update that they can take you through to resolve that too. And it's annoying because then when it fails, nothing else gets updated ever on the machine. It just can't get past that particular point. So sometimes you do have to go back to Microsoft and say, how can I clear this one out, manually install, or work through whatever problem this happens to be? And usually once it gets past that one, it can then pick up and do all of the rest of the ones along the way. That it's not an easy one to troubleshoot, I'm afraid, and it's annoying as it can be, and it's difficult to troubleshoot, but I have gotten through it before. You just have to stick with Microsoft.
all right, thank you very much. Appreciate all your resources.
Absolutely, and good luck.
Thank you.
There's a lot to go through. I hate those update ones. Those are annoying to try to get through, and it's difficult. It's kind of a pain because, as I mentioned, you can't get past that particular issue until you resolve the one before it, and then Windows never gets updated ever again, which is what happened with me, and going through those pieces. And having that there. Let's go to the chat room. We had a ton of calls come through in that hour, but I'm going to go back through the chat room real quick before I lose much of my voice and see if anybody has anything else to add to those pieces. There might even be the link that's there and being able to work with it and having that there. I think we've covered the bases. And from my perspective, I think my voice has covered the bases as well. I think we're finally out of time, not because I have less time. It's because my voice is now done with that. But we were able to get through a lot of content today. I like that we were able to get through so much content on the Q&A that we did earlier, and your phone calls are fantastic today. Thank you so much for that. Would not be able to do the study group without you. As a reminder, for those of you watching, you can always go to the calendar and see when the next study group is. The next A+ study group will be next month on the 6th. And on next Wednesday, a week from today at 12 noon Eastern time, will be my Network Plus study group, where we do exactly the same thing we just did, except we'll do it with Network Plus content and go through the networking side of things. And of course, until then, if you have any questions on anything regarding the study groups or anything on my website, you can always go to ProfessorMesser.com. And at the top and bottom is the Contact Us link to be able to do that as well. I want to thank everybody for attending the live study group. We'll see you next time on the A+ study group. Thanks, everyone.